What if I told you there was a Deadlock hero who had an amazing early game harass and one of the best ganking abilities the game has ever seen? Well, look no further, ladies and gentlemen, because that's what we have with Deadlock's newest hero, Mirage. When playing Mirage, you may not be the top fragger in the game, but he's definitely one of the most underrated heroes. As usual, everyone flocks to the new hero when they're introduced to the game, but Mirage's play rate has dropped significantly. One of the biggest issues Deadlock players face is that they want to be the star quarterback and don't realize how important it is to simply be a useful teammate to help your carries thrive while you assist your way to victory. Today, you're gonna learn how to play Mirage as we go over each of his unique abilities, his style of play, and some of the best items to use with him. Before we dive into Mirage's playstyle, I need to tell you a little bit about myself because as gamers who enjoy team-based games, we need to have a little bit of self-awareness. I'm ancient when it comes to the gaming community, and I've been playing shooters since the days of dial-up internet. I grew up on Counter-Strike and ended up being one of the first coaches for a professional Counter-Strike team. One of the reasons I got into coaching is because, if I'm being completely honest, I've never been the best fragger, and that's totally fine. Not everyone can be an all-star, and the sooner you get that, the sooner you'll improve at team-based games. Mirage isn't a quote-unquote support hero in the same way like a Dynamo or Kelvin may be, but he is part of the supporting cast. In my opinion, this is the best way to play Mirage. When you play and build him correctly, you're going to set your team up for a lot of success, and you'll definitely top the scoreboard for assists. When playing as Mirage, you have 3 important jobs: do damage, crowd control, and gank. Mirage has an amazing crowd control ability that sets you and your lane mate up for early kills during the laning phase. His ult is one of the best ganking abilities in the game that nobody expects, and one of his abilities can put a ton of pressure on the other team and push them back and keep them away from your guardians and walkers. I promise that if you get into the mindset of being a supportive teammate, Mirage is easily one of the most underrated heroes in the game. And best of all, if you're someone who isn't a fan of using active items, don't worry, because you don't really need to use any for Mirage unless they're situational. Mirage's first ability is Tornado. This ability transforms you into a tornado that damages enemies and lifts them up in the air while giving you bullet evasion for a brief period when you emerge. The tornado goes in a straight line, meaning you're able to do some great crowd control in a team fight if the other team is grouped up. This is a great ability during the laning phase when there's 2 players on the opposing team who are playing too close to each other. Duration Extender is a great item for this ability because it increases the time that the enemies are lifted in the air, rendering them useless as you and your team take your shots. The base bullet evasion is 25% and it increases to 45% at max level. The second ability is Fire Scarabs, which has multiple charges and shoots scarabs that steal max health from the enemies and apply bullet resist reduction. It starts with max health steal of 90 and it increases to 160 at the max level. With your second skill point, the bullet resist reduction increases from -10% to -25%. Personally, I think the Fire Scarabs are easily Mirage's most underrated ability. The damage from this ability increases as you gain more spirit, letting it do some massive burst damage to opponents. The third ability is Jin's Mark, an awesome passive ability that stacks as you hit opponents. It starts with 16 spirit damage per stack and increases to 26 spirit damage per stack with your second ability point. These stacks do more damage as you add more spirit power, and as you'll learn in the next section about items, it can get pretty ridiculous as you build out your equipment. And with your first ability point, you apply an 80% movement slow when you have at least 2 stacks. The goal with Jin's Mark is to get stacks on multiple enemies, so during the laning phase, you go back and forth shooting each enemy on lane. This puts a ton of pressure on them as you get early weapon and early spirit damage. This puts a lot of pressure on them as you get early weapon and spirit damage. And check this out, you can either wait for your stacks to trigger on their own, or you can trigger it manually. And by the way, don't tell my teammates this, but I like to use the manual trigger to steal kills when I'm in need of a few more souls to get my next item. But anyways, lastly, we have Traveler, Mirage's ultimate ability. This ability allows you to teleport to any friendly or enemy character visible on the map. That's right, any friendly or enemy character visible on the map. Traveler makes you the master ganker, and you can start tilting the scales in your favor pretty early on in the game. Since you're putting so much pressure on the other team during the laning phase, you can get some great farm and push them back quite a bit. Once you get your ult at 3,000 souls, with the right communication, you can gank other lanes before the enemies on your lane even know you ever left. This is a great ability in the early game to go help one of your teammates who's on a solo lane. You simply teleport in, pop a tornado, and start double teaming with your teammate. If you're both doing enough damage, you can easily get a kill and take out a Guardian in a short period of time. This is also great in the late game to help you split push or quickly get back to base. But keep in mind that you can only teleport to someone visible on the map, so you'll need to communicate with your teammates and have a lot of mini-map awareness. When it comes to leveling abilities, I've personally been spreading out my ability points evenly. A lot of people prefer to level Jin's Mark and Tornado first, but like I said, I think Fire Scarabs are criminally underrated. Each ability serves a purpose with Mirage, so I like to spread out the ability points. But let me know what you think about leveling his abilities down in the comments below. And hey, before we jump into the builds, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new, make sure you subscribe, ring that notification bell, because we're making a ton of Deadlock content over here, all right? So anyways, my current preferred build is the average Jonas Spirit build. I recently made a video on it with some gameplay that you could check out right after this video. Again, I think Mirage shines the most when you play in a supportive role. A lot of people just try to max out his weapon damage, but I prefer a Spirit build like this. To be completely transparent, I do think Mirage's effectiveness does fall off a little bit once you pass like the 30-minute mark. And prior to this build, Average Jonas actually made a gun build, so sometimes if our game pushes a little bit further into the late game, I'll switch to his gun build to get some increased firepower if we're going into that late game. Getting back to the Spirit build, during the laning phase, you have 3 primary goals: harass, harass, and harass. You want items that let you shoot more bullets so you can keep stacks on the enemies as often as possible. This forces them to have to play back by the tower and their shop. My build order, it really depends on how the lane is going. If I'm playing against competent players who are good at harassing, I always get extra regen first. And by the way, on a side note, speaking of you subscribing, I get extra regen first on a lot of heroes, and I plan on making a video in the near future about some of the most underrated items in the game, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it, all right? But anyways, during a typical game, I like to get items like Ammo Scavenger and Monster Rounds first. These 2 items give me more ammo to apply stacks and to get creep kills a bit more effectively. This allows you to switch between shooting enemies and creeps seamlessly to constantly apply pressure. Each of the items in the early game are designed to do more damage, so buy them in whatever order feels right to you. The next set of items for the mid games are to get your bullets to hit as many enemies as possible and do the most spirit damage as possible. I like to start off with Soul Shredder bullets so the enemies take more damage from my stacks, and then I get slow bullets because they're awesome. From here, I get Mystic Vulnerability, but the overall goal is to get a flex slot and save for toxic bullets as quickly as possible. There's a lot of healing in Deadlock, and toxic bullets are such a great item, especially when you get your first core item on this list. Remember how I was saying I like to steal kills with Jin's Mark if I need more souls? Well, you need to rush Ricochet as fast as possible when you're playing Mirage. Again, we're trying to get our bullets to hit as many enemies as possible. By this time, you're applying a ton of debuffs and amplifying your damage with items like Soul Shredder bullets, slowing bullets, toxic bullets, and Mystic Vulnerability. So you're weakening the enemy team like crazy as you bounce your bullets off as many of them as possible. Next up, you want to get Escalating Exposure as soon as you can because it lets you do even more spirit damage. I'm usually trying to build out some more mid-game items like Spirit Lifesteal and Duration Extender commander before I get escalating exposure unless I'm getting some great farm or a lot of kills. Lastly, there's one crucial item that is not on this list that Mirage needs desperately, and that is extra stamina. Mirage needs to get close for his tornado, and sometimes you need to make a fast escape after you teleport. There are far too many times when I feel like if I just had one more dash, I could have survived. So I started building extra stamina on Mirage and sometimes even getting superior stamina for more mobility. Stamina isn't always necessary because if you're playing Mirage as a supportive role, you're going to spend a lot of time in the backline simply spreading as much damage and as many debuffs as possible as your team gets the frags, and it is a beautiful thing. And that is it for how to play Mirage. I've been having a ton of fun playing this hero because he's so versatile and can really help a team out. As I mentioned, I'm not the best shooter, so having a character that builds ricochet and supports the team is perfect if you're someone like me. So get out there, spread some damage and spread some love and get you some wins. All right, but anyways, that is all I got for this video. Again, if you're new, make sure you subscribe, ring that notification bell. All right, but that's all I got for you. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.